So ladies and gentlemen, after taking a simple dive into what is text inside of Premiere Pro and how we can use text and its properties, it's finally time to get into keyframes. And keyframes is a big thing for you editors. Look, keyframes is something that's going to be common across all editing programs and especially After Effects. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this course, the objective for you guys is to not really focus on the editing inside of Premiere Pro. It's more so to become really good at After Effects so that you can kind of back that up with Premiere Pro, with its sound design, with its music, with its cuts, with its pacing, and then you are able to become an amazing animator inside of After Effects. And the first step to becoming an amazing animator is understanding keyframes. Keyframes are the same here as they are in After Effects. So understanding them here is really going to help you understand them in After Effects. There's just barely minor small differences. Okay. And so today we're going to be diving into what are keyframes, how do we use them, and how do we use them in editing? What's a real life example of us using them? So as you guys can see, I'm in the exact same scene from our last course, which is where we created our text style. And we're just going to go ahead and quickly delete this. Okay. Now, how do we start to understand keyframes? Well, the first thing I would ask you is if you wanted to create a point inside of Premiere Pro. So if you wanted to make Premiere Pro and tell him, like if you wanted to get Premiere Pro and tell it that at this point, a certain thing is going to happen. How would you do that? You would do that through keyframes. Why is that useful? Because sometimes we want to tell Premiere Pro that at 0 seconds, the camera was in this position. And at 5 seconds, it became in this position. And we want to let Premiere Pro move the camera from this point to this point. The whole objective of keyframes is to allow you as a user to speak to the software and tell it at this moment, this is happening. And this variable now changes to this moment, which is this thing happening. And I understand this is complex, but I just want to quickly get this thought out there so I get you thinking in the same way and through the same concepts that I'm thinking of right now. So let's go ahead and understand keyframes on a real basis. When you click on your whatever clip and you go up to your effect controls, on the left side, you probably saw these stopwatch icons, and these are called your keyframes. Keyframes are basically just you saying, hey Premiere, in this moment, this thing's happening, and in that moment, that thing's happening, okay? I'm going to rearrange some stuff just so we can see more of the effect controls panel, just so that we can understand things a little bit more. And I'm going to move this back just so that we can really see this stuff. And so here we go. All right. So if I just want to quickly cut up this clip, I'm going to click on C to bring up my razor tool and just cut around this clip. And I'm just going to delete everything else. So use A on my selection tool, delete this and just bring this thing back. So if I took this clip and I wanted to tell Premiere Pro, I want to have it start in the top left and I want it to move eventually to the bottom right or something like that. Let's say I now, zoom out a little bit. Let me quickly fit this in. And I move this frame to the top left like so. And I want it to start in the top left. And so by 3 seconds over here, I want it to end in the bottom right. So I move it to the bottom right. Now Premiere Pro has changed these variables and thinks, okay, he just wants the clip to be in the bottom right. So I'm going to leave the clip in the bottom right. So if I go back and I move it back to the top left, I go do this again and Premiere Pro thinks, oh, okay, he just wants the clip in the top left. So I'm going to keep this clip in the top left. I can't tell Premiere Pro to start the clip on top left and then eventually move it to the bottom right. That is where keyframes come in. So if I move back to the point at 1 second and I click on my stopwatch icon, this creates what we call a keyframe. And a keyframe is a moment on your timeline that tells Premiere Pro that at this moment for this variable, these are the values. I'm going to repeat that one more time. So when you create a keyframe, you have created a point on the timeline that tells Premiere Pro, this is the point. It tells it that on this point at this time value at 001 seconds for your position, this is the value of the position. It doesn't understand anything else. All it understands now is that at this point, the value of my position is this. And we both understand that the value of the position determines where the clip is on the screen. And so now if I move forward till second 3 and I move my clip to the bottom right, now Premiere Pro has 2 keyframes. So it has 2 instances where it understands knowledge. The first one being this keyframe, the blue one, which is where it knows that our clip is in the top left. And the second keyframe is the one we just created, which is where Premiere Pro knows that our clip is in the bottom right. How did I create those keyframes? It's very simple. The way you create keyframes is, by the way, the way you can operate around keyframes is through these 3 buttons here. You use this to go to the previous keyframe. and I use this button here to add or remove keyframes. So since we already have a keyframe here, I'm going to go over to 3 seconds, and I'm going to click on this button here to add another keyframe. And on my second keyframe, so I've created another instance of knowledge, I'm going to move my clip to the bottom right. And check out what happens now. So again, use this to move back to my first keyframe, this to my second keyframe. If I go to my first keyframe, Premiere Pro at this point knows my clip is in the top left. And if I go to my second keyframe, Premiere Pro now knows my clip is in the bottom right. Watch exactly what's about to happen. If I watch through this clip, nothing is happening. As soon as we get it to the keyframe, check this out. Is where I speak and I take a few pauses. All of a sudden, I can create movement. Why? Because Premiere Pro now understands, okay, this is in the top left and this is in the top right. How do I make my clip go from top left to top right within second 1 and second 3? It's going to move it from the top left to the bottom right. I'm going to show you one more example just so that we can understand things a lot better. So let's quickly reset things, and I'm going to keyframe the scale. If I keyframe the scale, I added a keyframe, an instance in which Premiere Pro knows the scale is 100. Now I'm going to move to anywhere else, and I just want to create another keyframe just so we can have 2 instances. Okay, so now we have 2 instances where both keyframes are 100. So in between these, nothing is going to happen because they are both the same value. Okay, now if I start my scale at 100 and I go to my second keyframe and I tell Premiere Pro, okay, at this point it's going to start at 100, and on my second keyframe it's going to turn into, let's go with 130. Now all of a sudden when I watch through it, it has to start on my first keyframe. Remember to use your arrows to go through them. Your first keyframe is going to be at 100, so it creates a point in the timeline at which the scale is 100, and the second keyframe is the scale 130. And if I watch through this and I take a few, we have a subtle zoom in like so, and as you guys can see. So this is how you create zoom ins. You create 2 keyframes. You create one which tells Premiere Pro, okay, at this moment this is the scale, and another one that tells at this moment this is another scale. If the scale is bigger, it's going to zoom in. If the scale is smaller, it's going to zoom out. Let me show you a quick example. If I took this keyframe now, which says scale 130, and I move it back to the beginning, now my scale 130 starts here, and my second keyframe is at 100. So now all of a sudden Premiere Pro understands, okay, so at this instance, in this moment right here, the scale is at 130. And in this moment right here, the scale is at 100. It's going to start it at 130 and zoom it out to 100. And you can play around with keyframes. You can even change the distance. Like you can make the 100 be all the way back here and 130 all the way over here. Something like this. And now if you watch through it, you have a way slower zoom out. Nice and simple, right? So keyframes are something that seems complex, but is actually nice and simple. If you want to remove your keyframes, you just click on your stopwatch and you click on OK. And remember, it's going to leave it at the last value in which your playhead was. So if I left my keyframes here and I go over to here, let's say at 116, and then I remove my keyframes, it's going to leave my scale for the whole clip at 116. And then I can just reset it, okay? Keyframes seem like a complex thing, and I know you're probably thinking, yeah, that is very, very complex. But it's really, really simple when you think of it just this way. A keyframe is just a point inside of your program telling the program that at this moment, in this specific time, a certain value is a certain number, and you can add keyframes to anything. So if I add a keyframe for my position, I can tell it that at this moment, it's this position, and I can move to a different moment and tell it that at this moment, it's a different position. If I add a keyframe for my scale, I can say at this moment, this is the scale, and at a different moment, this is a different scale. So I can add keyframes at different points, at different times, and tell my program that at different times, different values are true. So like I can add a keyframe on 0.1 seconds and tell it that the scale is 100, and keyframe on 0.3 seconds and tell it that the scale is now 150, and it's going to animate everything in between it. And this is the fundamentals to animations. And yes, it is complex. So let's go ahead and practice it a few times so that you can understand it. What I want you to do is go down here and I want you to click on this rectangle and just draw out a random rectangle like this. Okay, it's going to be added inside of your graphic layer, so just move it to the beginning and let's just shorten it down like this. Your graphic layer literally relies on the exact same position and everything, so we're going to either go down to motion or vector motion. Either one works. And now let's go ahead and mess around with a few things. So when I move this rectangle around, there we go, you can see it moving around the screen. Now, let's go ahead and animate the rectangle going from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. So all we got to do is just add a keyframe here for my position, because my position is what's going to be changing. And then I'm going to move I want you guys to do this with me, by the way, just to make sure that you can grasp the concept of keyframes. Then we're going to move our playhead forward to maybe like 2 seconds over here. And now I'm going to add another keyframe and I'm going to move this thing to the right side. Now, as you guys noticed, my first keyframe starts in the middle, which means my first keyframe starts not on the left side, on the middle, which means now the rectangle is going to go from the middle to the right side.
I take a few pauses.
Okay, nice and simple. Now, if I go back to my first keyframe and move it to the left side, now all of a sudden, the first keyframe is on the left side and the second keyframe is on the right side. Now, if I watch through it, it's going to go from left to right. Let's do one real quick from top to bottom. So we're going to click on this and click on OK to undo our keyframes and click on reset to bring it back to the center. Let's bring it up to the top over here and add a keyframe. This is going to add a moment inside of Premiere Pro that tells us that at this moment, this is where our rectangle is. I don't want it to be back down here. I want it to start in the top. So I can either go back and add another keyframe, or I could just drag this keyframe back. And now we're going to move our playhead forward, and we're going to bring this rectangle all the way down. Now all of a sudden, it's also going to start at the top of the screen and end in the bottom. And now if I watch, it's going to animate its way down here. Nice and simple. Now let's create a few more complex animations. Let's say I wanted to move from the bottom left to the top right, and I want you to do this first. And if you don't know how to do it, then you can watch me do it so you can understand it a bit better. Let's say I wanted to move from the bottom left to the top right and also scale from a very small rectangle to a very big rectangle. Go ahead and do that, okay? Start it in the bottom left at a small scale and end it in the top right at a big scale. And let's see what you end up with. And if you don't know how to do it, here it is real quick. So all you gotta do is go back over here and then keyframe the position and keyframe the scale. And the first thing we wanna do is obviously, start it on the bottom left, but we'll take care of this in just a second. We're going to move all the way forward and we're going to add a keyframe for the position and the scale, okay? Now we're going to go back to our first keyframes. We're gonna have it start in the bottom left, which is over here. And we're going to scale it down like this. Now we're going to go to our next keyframes and we're going to have it end in the top right, which is over here, and have it scale up like this. Okay, we're going to have it end right over here. And now if we go ahead and watch through these, it starts here and then it becomes big like so. Let's make a few more just so that we can practice. Undo these keyframes by clicking your stopwatch and reset both the values. Let's have it, I want you to have it start at 90 degrees and then I want it to scale down and rotate back to 0 degrees and scale up and rotate back to 90 degrees one more time. Okay, so this one's really, really complex. So remember, start at 90 degrees, okay? So 90-degree rotation. And then I want it to scale down and go back to 0 degrees and then scale back up and go over to 90 degrees, all right? So let's go ahead and do this. We want to go back to our first section. What are the two things we're going to be using? We're going to be using scale and rotation. So we're going to keyframe the scale and keyframe the rotation. And we're going to move, let's say, over to here. And we want it to scale down and become 90 degrees. So now we're going to, we need to start it at 90 degrees. So let's go to our first keyframe and change these to 90 degrees. Now, if we move forward somewhere like here, we can scale it down and then have it go back to 0 degrees, like so. And then if we want to move forward one more time, we can have it scale back up like so and have it become 90 degrees again, just like this. And now if we watch through this, we have a scale down and a scale up. Nice and simple. And there we go. That is basically how keyframes work inside of Premiere Pro. So real quick, before you move on to any other courses, I want you to practice all three of these animations with me right now. We're going to go ahead and do them one more time just to make sure we have a good understanding of keyframes. So I'm going to reset all these parameters, go back to 0, and let's get started. The first one, move the square from left to right. Second one, move it from the bottom to the top. Third one, move it from bottom left to top right with a scale. So scale small bottom left and scale big top right. And then the fourth one is rotate 90 degrees and then scale down to 0 and then scale back up to 90. So I'm going to duplicate this 4 more times. And the best way to duplicate things is to hold down Alt and click on it and then move it and then let go of Alt. Okay? So hold down Alt, click on it, move it, let go of your mouse, and then let go of Alt. If you let go of Alt before this, if I let go of Alt and then leave it here, it's going to move it. Okay, so hold down Alt and then move it here, and hold down Alt and move it again, and hold down Alt and move it again. Okay, and I'm also going to duplicate the thing under it. So let's quickly undo all of these. This is a quick lessons on duplication now. So select all of these, hold down Alt and move them. Select all of these, hold down Alt and move them. Select all of these, hold down Alt and move them. Don't let go of Alt until you have moved your thing. Okay, now for the first one, from left to right, we're going to start our box in the left side, add a keyframe to the position, move somewhere to the, I don't know, middle or right, and then we're going to move all the way to the right side. this keyframe starts really early, so I'm going to move it here, and this one starts really early, and so I'm going to move it here.
Is where
There we go.
And I take a
Nice animation from left to right. For this one, we're going to start at the top, so let's move our box to the top. We're using its Y position. We're going to keyframe our position, move the playhead forward, and then move the box to the bottom. And this is going to move the box from the top to the bottom.
Sample video is where I speak.
There we go.
I take
Awesome.
a few pauses.
Now we have
Sample
another
video.
one. So scale from the bottom left to the top right. So let's start with the position and scale. And then let's move forward and then also add a keyframe for position and scale. Let's go back to our first keyframes, have it start small and bottom left. And then moves to our second keyframe and make it big and move it to the top right. Now all of a sudden we have our first keyframes which say it starts in the bottom left and is a certain scale, and our second keyframe which say it ends in the top right with a certain scale. If we watch through this, it goes from bottom left to right. And last one we've got is our rotation. So let's go ahead and get it started at 90 degrees. Or we can add a keyframe and then set it to 90 degrees, whichever one works. So keyframe rotation and scale, start it at 90 degrees. And then we're going to move these back slightly and move this playhead forward. And we're going to have it go back to 0 degrees and then scale down. And we're going to move these keyframes back a little bit so we can have room for our third keyframes, which is where they're going to scale back up and go back to 90 degrees. So this way they go from this scale to this, and if we play through it, there we go.
I take a few pauses.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a basic overview of keyframes, and you can use keyframes for absolutely everything. So whenever you want to think of animating things, I'll give you a few quick examples off the top of my head. Okay, so we're going to delete all three of these just so we go back to our original one. The first basic one is you can use it with opacity, right? If you want your opacity for your clip to fade in, you can't have it start at 0 and end at 100 like this. So we add a keyframe for the opacity at the beginning of the clip. We move a bit forward to like 1 second. We add another keyframe. Since we want it to appear fully at this point, we're going to leave the second keyframe at 100%. Then we go to our first keyframe and drop it to 0%. If we watch through this,
sample video,
you have a fade in like this. Now, you don't really need to make this or learn this right now. We're going to be learning all of these later on in the courses. But for now, I just want you to understand you can use keyframes with absolutely everything in Premiere Pro. And this gives you so much room to have so much more creativity. With your text, you can use your keyframes. With your video, you can use your keyframes. You can use keyframes everywhere. So it's very important that we now start grasping this concept. And when we think of edits, instantly think of, there's a concept which is called keyframes. I can add a moment in time that informs the program at this moment for this certain thing, whether it's position, scale, or whatever, this is the position. And I can change that over time and create my own animations. And you guys are going to be practicing animations with me for the rest of the masterclass. So don't worry too much about it right now. But I just wanted to introduce you guys to keyframes so you can now understand it. If you guys seem to understand it easily, then you guys can move forward. If not, please send me a message so that I can know which courses to update, which courses to make better. But I do think this is a very good explanation of keyframes. And if you want to give yourself some more time to practice, feel free to close down this course and start practicing your keyframes, start animating a bunch of different things inside of Premiere Pro until you can understand how these things work. And remember, keyframes are just a point on your timeline that tell Premiere Pro that at this moment, this is what your value for your variable is. So this is what your position is. And at a separate moment, now it has changed. With this being said, guys, that is everything that we need to cover for keyframes. So we're going to be diving really in depth into animations and smoothing the animations and making very smooth and high quality animations later on in the course. So don't even worry about that. But it's very important that you first grasp the concept of keyframes and how you can use keyframes in Premiere Pro. Let's go ahead and dive into audio and music in our next course and understand the music levels, how we can alternate audio, and how we can use music in our videos. I'll see you guys there.